Hey guys, Maniac here with GameAccess.net, and I just finished Duke Nukem Forever. I played it, I beat it, I enjoyed every second of it. I gotta say, I know I heard there was a lot of negative reviews about it on the internet. I don't know where they were coming from. Whoever reviewed it must have been an idiot, or at the very least wouldn't know a good game if it bit them on the ass. Maybe the internet reviews. This is like the second time I've heard of something like this happening. First happened with Splatterhouse. I mean, all the reviews of that were abysmal, and actually that game was pretty good. It's happening again. I don't know. Is the gaming review media turning into the Academy Awards? It's quite possible. I mean, I think that the game should just simply be fun. But what the reason why I did this video was not because I wanted to do a review of Duke Nukem Forever. I don't really do reviews on my site usually. What I wanted to do was I wanted to talk about the final version of the game itself and how it compared to a lot of the content that was released over the course of the years. What finished, what ended up in the final version, what didn't end up in the final version. What I kind of was hoping would end up in the final version, what was in the final version that surprised me. Just that kind of stuff. Because you're talking about a 13+ year dev cycle. A lot of stuff didn't make the final version, including a lot of stuff that, well, we already saw parts of. And were almost initially promised over around 10 years ago. So I wanted to do this video to kind of talk about what it is that made it and what it is that didn't make it. Back when a lot of the content was released around the time in 2009 when 3D Realms shut down and closed up production, a lot of content got released, screenshots, design documents, videos. I talked about it a bit in my History of Duke Nukem Forever video. But I didn't show any of that content in the video because of legal reasons and because I just had a respect for the continuing development. But now that the development is over, you know, and people can buy the game finally, I can't say that certainly all the leaked videos that I saw did end up in the final version. So it was all totally legitimate. Some of it was placeholder stuff, but a lot of the animations I saw for some of the characters were all in the final version. If you didn't see it in the trailers in some cases, you saw it in the final version of the game. But what I want to talk about a bit was the released version of the design document, which is the original design document of the game. If I could break up the game itself, or at least should say the single-player version of the game itself, into I could probably fit it into about 3 distinct segments. The first segment would be the Las Vegas segment of the game. The second would be the transitioning levels between the Las Vegas segment and the Hoover Dam segment, which is all the ghost towns, all the driving segments, and basically all that, the canyons, and that particular segment. And finally, the final version, the last segment I would say, would be all the Hoover Dam levels. The reason why I would break them off into these 3 distinct segments is because they play very much differently, they feel differently, and it kind of feels like that they were developed at different times of the game. Now, the original design documents of the game follow the Hoover Dam, basically follow the Hoover Dam past that segment into much further segments. And there were other portions of the game that were written in or drafted in the design document and do not appear in the final version of the game. There was a lot more that the game would have had past Hoover Dam, but the final version of the game ends at the Hoover Dam, particularly at the end of the Hoover Dam segment. They pushed up some bosses, they moved around some bosses. They moved around a lot of gameplay segments. Some gameplay segments that would have been in later versions and later levels were moved up into earlier levels. And of course, characters were completely cut. A lot of characters, some characters were completely cut. For those of you who haven't played the game, I just want to tell you that there are spoilers here. For those of you who have no interest in playing the game or are just curious like what did end up in the final version, well, keep watching. Or and those of you who have played it and think, well, what else would there have been? This is for you. I think the most controversial omission to the original design documents was, of course, the omission of Bombshell. Bombshell was, for a long time, going to be a major character in the game, and she is in the original game design documents for Duke Nukem Forever, and a lot of concept art appeared of her. In fact, actually, back in 1999, and it appeared in my History of Duke Nukem Forever video, Bombshell was going to be the be-all and basically the female counterpart to Duke Nukem. Like Duke Nukem was like the main character and a female hero of the game who would have had a major role in the game, more than just a sidekick, but actually in the original design document she was going to be a playable character. Was of course Bombshell. I showed some artwork of her in the original game, in the original history Actually, she does appear in all the art books. This is the Prima official collector's edition art book. I'm just going to try to pull up her original artwork so that you can see what she looked like and just how finished she was, actually. Here. This was right here, the original design I showed you guys. This was officially the only concept art that was released of her. You could probably find this image online. These images right here, you can also find online now, but they do appear in the final version of the game under concept art. But if you can see right here in this portion of the screen, this looks like to be an almost finished version of her. And there's no mention in the book that she does not actually appear or that she was cut from the game, which makes me think when I was glancing through the pages, was she actually in the final version of the game? And I can say that no, she is not. I played through the game and I didn't see her. I might have been blind. You might have snuck her in there at some point, but as far as I can tell, she wasn't in the game at all. Originally, she was drafted based upon the original version of the game, or I should say compared to the final version of the game. The original version of the game was going to start off in Las Vegas at the Lady Killer Casino, which is how it pretty much finishes. It would have progressed through that. At some point, Duke was going to meet Bombshell at the Lady Killer Casino, and it would have progressed on that he would have had a mental image of her and she would have shown off her chops. Then at some point in the game, Duke was going to get knocked out. I specifically read in certain design documents, I can't remember exactly, he was going to be knocked out either right after he blew up the alien mothership that was over the turrets, or at some point around him blowing up the Hoover Dam. At some point in the game design document, about midway through the game, Duke was going to get, knocked on the head and knocked out completely. And he would have been extremely concerned about that. What would have happened after that is that when Duke is out and you're concerned for Duke, the game would have switched over to Bombshell. And you would have played levels as Bombshell. Some of the segments you would have done playing as Bombshell, according to the original design documents, you actually played as Duke, particularly the RC car racing shrinking thing that originally was going to be for Bombshell. Right after that would have happened, Duke Nukem would have had his fantasy casino in a strip club. He would have had some kind of coma sequence where he would have been in the strip club and he would have had to have completed puzzles in his days of a strip club. Which would have culminated with him basically meeting Bombshell as a elite stripper of the area. Some of those segments actually did end up. There was a lot of design documents of the strip club. I'm trying to go through it right now so you guys can see it for yourselves. I'm trying to find out where it is, so you can see some images. Actually, one of the images I actually showed in a previous video. Here you go. This was this picture right here, which is censored on the collector's edition art book, shows some of the motion capturing for the stripper sequences from a long time ago. I showed a real version of that picture in my How to Make a Monster, just as a joke, How to Make a Monster review. I used that picture because I had seen it years ago. They posted up on their website years ago, uncensored actually. You could see the woman's face, and that's why I was surprised that they censored it in this version, in that book. So that so basically it all would have made sense that was used for that segment. In the final version of the game, the strip club sequence is there. Duke does get knocked out. I believe he gets knocked out on his right after the Duke Dome, right after destroying the alien queen in the Duke Dome. He does get knocked out, and basically one level would have been was a strip club, but it was just a generic stripper that was the be-all and end-all that you get a lap dance from at the end of the game. And there's a little portal joke, at the end of the strip, you get promised cake or something like that. So I thought that was kind of cool. So there were some portal references there. But for me, it didn't have the same gravitas as it would have had if Bombshell had been in there. Basically, the way the game ends is, it would have ended with Bombshell giving him a lap dance, and he right after that happened, he would have woken up from his coma, and he would have continued on the game as her. I think in some of the original segments, you would have switched back and forth between the two of the characters, but that didn't happen. That obviously didn't happen. You would have basically played the game from the two perspectives after that. It would have culminated with the... there would have been more to the game. There were obviously, and there were screenshots of this, Area 51 segments. where Duke has to infiltrate a government, or I should say, in the case of design documents, called the EDF base. He would have had to go through there and fight his way through there, which had been taken over. He would have had to just solve puzzles and stuff like that through there. And it would have culminated with there would have been a launching of a nuclear missile, because that was in the 2001 trailer. And it would have finally culminated with Duke basically making his way onto the alien father ship, which is how it was called in the design document, finding that there was a Duke clone army, and having to destroy the father ship from the inside out, and making his way off the ship. None of that takes place in the game. There's no EDF base. There's nothing like that. There's no bombshell. There's no Duke clones. There's nothing like that. And the game ends literally right after basically you destroy the Hoover Dam. How do I feel about that? Well, I'm kind of feeling bummed that Bombshell wasn't in the final version of the game. But the game I played was fantastic. And if you remember, a lot of DLC was teased after, or I should say before the release of the game. In fact, anybody who has access to the First Access Club, which I am, is promised that they will be getting that DLC for free. In fact, actually, there's a leaflet in the final version of the game you can pull out of the thing saying more DLC is coming, you know, DLC levels are coming. I'm kind of hoping that these DLC levels are continuing levels, and could they include Bombshell? The heavy favorite on the Gearbox forums is that those levels will feature Bombshell. And from what I can tell from the concept art and stuff like that, it looks like they did have a final version of her completed that just didn't appear in the game at all. So I'm looking forward to the DLC. It's a great game. If you haven't picked it up, you certainly can. Great toast to Gearbox and 3D Realms for finishing it up. Now, from what I can ascertain as to why those levels weren't, and these are just my conjecture, why those levels weren't in the final version of the game, my guess is that 3D Realms had, I mean, I saw those dam levels back in 2006, back at the, when I was watching the Jace Hall show. It definitely looked very similar. I watched some of the 2006 footage that was included on the final version of the game. If you beat the game, you'll see some 2006 footage. I did not. Basically, those levels were changed. The Las Vegas levels looked, which ironically enough in the game, look the most polished. They're actually probably the more newest developed, because up until 2006, Vegas was at night. Those Vegas levels were at night. In fact, famously in the 2001 trailer, when they showed that, you could see Vegas at night. But in the final version of the game, Vegas is during the daytime. I'm a little disappointed about that. I kind of prefer Vegas at night. But they said they had better color palettes and stuff like that, showing Vegas during the daytime. My guess is that those other levels, those last levels, were cut, or because maybe they weren't developed, maybe they hadn't gotten to those levels yet, or maybe they just figured it'd be better off just to cut there. But my guess, Gearbox has said on several occasions, they did not develop any more of the game. They didn't build any new levels of the game. They didn't build any new assets. They just polished what they had by 3D Realms and by what Triptych had done. The other studio had done most of the multiplayer. The multiplayer was created by the other studio that worked on it. So, could more assets be developed for DLC? Could more gameplay be developed for DLC? I certainly hope so. The way the game ends is that right after the Hoover Dam is destroyed, there you see a small cutscene where Duke Nukem is declared dead, and you hear Duke's voiceover saying, "What a shitty-ass ending, I'm still alive." And it ends with, right after the credits, Duke announcing his in a press conference that he intends to run for president, which is certainly, I mean, he's more than welcome to, because he had saved the world again. Where are they going to go from there? Duke is president. Hey, presidents have been video game characters. You know, video game characters have been presidents before. If you guys remember, Max is president of the United States. Sam Max, of course. It's a lot of humor that you can do there by being president. So, I'm kind of hopeful on the DLC. There's a little bit of a tidbits of what's going on. If you guys want to read the original design documents, there's really no harm in it anymore. The game's out, so you can see what might have been. I don't want to include any of those really on the on this video for legal reasons, but you can go just Google them and find them. Until next time, this is Maniac with Game Access, Hail to the king. Over and out.